Yeah.
It is. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started, Nick. Got sort of a critical mass here. Hey, welcome everyone.
Hello.
I'm Joe Lebrano, Director of the School of Theater and Professor of Theater here at George Mason University. And thank you for joining us for the first of this semester's conversations with BIPOC theater artists engaged in explorations of race and power in their work as playwrights, dramaturgs, directors, designers, scholars, art actors, and activists. We're excited to engage in these vital conversations with some of the country's clearest voices at the center of creating anti-racist theater. A few housekeeping items before we begin. The conversation will be conducted in two parts. During the first 45 minutes or so, I'll engage in direct conversation with our guest artist. And during that section, we ask that you keep all cameras turned off and mics muted. For optimal viewing, please keep your cameras on speaker view. Then after about 45 minutes, we'll open up for Q&A, at which point we welcome you to turn cameras back on, remain muted until you speak. For part two, we invite you to shift to gallery view. Please note the conversation is being recorded. The chat is being monitored by our program manager, Nick Horner. Feel free to post questions and comments there. And finally, we may address topics and ideas containing sensitive material. So let us remember to remain respectful, open, and growth-centered as a community. At the place George Mason University occupies, we give greetings and thanksgivings to these Potomac River life sources, the Manahoic ancestors, the Rappahannock, Pamunkey, Mattaponi, Upper Mattaponi, Chickahominy, Eastern Chickahominy, Nansemond, Monacan, Potawatomi, and Nottoway, past, present, and future. And the excuse me, and to the Piscataway tribes who have lived on both sides of the river from time immemorial. I invite you to acknowledge the indigenous stewards of the land wherever you are writing, by writing their names in the chat. Today's guest artist, Nikkole Salter, has had a remarkable career and is still emerging. So the biography I'm going to read is abridged at best. This abridged biography highlights just some of Nikkole's accomplishments. She arrived at the professional scene, she arrived on the professional scene with the Pulitzer Prize nominated play In the Continuum, which was co-authored and performed with Denai Guerrero. For its off-Broadway run in US State Department and Bloomberg-sponsored international tour, Ms. Salter received an Obie Award, the New York Outer Critics Circle John Gassner Award for Best New American Play, the Selsted Kanan Fellowship from the Theater Hall of Fame, and the Global Tolerance Award from the Friends of the United Nations, to name just a few. In the Continuum, which has received more than 20 productions around the world, was published by Samuel French and pronounced by the New York Times, Newsday, and New York Magazine as one of the best plays of 2005. Since then, Ms. Salter has written 8 full-length plays produced on 3 continents in 5 countries, including Repairing a Nation, Freedom Rider, Lines in the Dust, Torn Asunder, and Carnival, nominated for 7 Adelco Awards, including Best Playwright and Best Production, and winner for Best Ensemble Performance. As an actress, Ms. Salter can be seen in the feature film Pride and Glory, in the independent film Last Night, winner of the Audience Award for Best Film and the Grand Jury Prize for Best Screenplay in the 2015 American Black Film Festival, and heard as the voice of Letitia in the video game Midnight Club Los Angeles. Television credits include a recurring role in Godfather of Harlem and in the third season of New Amsterdam. Stage credits include performances in Terrell McCraney's Head of Passes at Berkeley Rep, Liesl Tommy's controversial production of Macbeth at the Shakespeare Theater in DC, Lydia Diamond's Stick Fly, co-produced by Arena Stage and the Huntington Theater, for which she received an Independent Reviewers of New England Award nomination for Best Actress, a starring role in Dominique Morisseau's Mudrow, and notable performances in the Broadway production of Robert Schinken's The Great Society. Ms. Salter will soon return to the Huntington for the world premiere of Kirsten Greenidge's Our Daughters Like Pillars. Ms. Salter's deep sense of social responsibility led her to co-found and serve as executive artistic director of the Continuum Project, Inc., a nonprofit organization that creates innovative artistic programming for community empowerment and enrichment. She has also served on the board of Theater Communications Group since 2015, and during her tenure as chair of the board of that organization, she led them through monumental institutional change amid a seismic shift in the not-for-profit theater field at large. It is my pleasure to welcome artist and writer Nikkole Salter, who is currently in her first semester as chair of theater and dance at Howard University. Welcome. It's truly an honor to speak with you, Nikkole.
That was excessive.
And that was a bridge. I was abbreviated. That's what I'm telling you. So those of you who want to see the full scope should check out the website for real. Yeah. But welcome.
You said abridged. That was hardly abridged. Abridged is Nikkole Salter, actress, playwright, educator, and advocate, is here with us today. Welcome, Nikkole Salter.
I try to bring all the flowers that are due. So
thank you. I appreciate it. I do.
You're welcome.
Do. I'm teasing, but I do.
Yeah. Now, I've been a fan of your work ever since watching you and Denai embody with dignity, grace, and humor all the characters, and in the Continuum. I kind of low-key followed your career for the past 10 plus years, actually. It might be that LA connection, that LA homegirl.
Yeah. I'll take it. I'll take it.
But you've really been able to integrate artistic excellence and a commitment to social justice, right? It's kind of no secret that my first foray into theater involved writing and performing stories inspired by autobiography. But I think all artists bring their own culture, identities, histories, right, into their work. So I'm always interested in how life experience informs creative practice. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the communities you've inhabited and how they've informed the stories you tell.
That's a very interesting question. And I remember you posing it to me even before this moment. And it got me to thinking, like, what is like the center thing, that drives the work that I do? And I couldn't put my finger on like a singular theme. I guess I've always been a fan of new work because I've always been a fan of the kind of work that is about what is happening. So I tend to be into things that are very contemporary. And I think that is because I view the art and craft of embodiment as really a spiritual tool that allows for healing and for us to collectively access our collective intentional evolution.
There we go.
And so while I think historic pieces and whether they're nearly historic or ancient, I don't feel like they have any less value than contemporary work. I think that's why I tend to gravitate gravitate toward that which is contemporary. But I thought deeper about this question, and I realized that I was raised by community organizers in the art.
Okay.
I was raised by community organizers in the art, and dare I say, community advocates, community activists in the art. So as a child, long story short, but my mom thought I would be an athlete. I showed no interest or capacity in that regard. But I was also a part of a household that had to do something. You couldn't not do nothing where I came from.
Right.
And I found acting through, I don't know, it's going to tell my age. There's a show called What's Happening?
Oh, yeah.
And a woman named Danielle Spencer, who played the role of the daughter in that family.
That's right.
She had a summer program at the community college, Southwest College in LA.
Right.
And the first time I heard about it, I asked my mom if I could do that instead of like softball. I think I was like 9.
You had your own vision. Yes.
I had my own vision.
Yes.
And when I say my mom was serious about that athleticism, she really was. Because athletes start early. So she was trying to karate chop, gymnastics me very early. Like I would say like 4 or 5. I was like, it just didn't stick. So by the time I was 9, I realized that I had to make some choices of my own. And I was a part of that program. And that program adapted Cinderella to a African-American urban hood sensibility and aesthetic.
Interesting.
And I think that was the first time I realized that people made stories.
Yeah.
Like stories weren't just like things that were made.
Right. That you had to fit yourself into, or just like they're pre-made. I think one of the travesties of being born and maybe even the modern world, especially in a metropolitan world, is that you are often disconnected from the way things are made. You just consume. And so it really struck me that like stories are like made by someone, and that you could alter a plot point or a character perspective or a given circumstance, and it actually takes on a whole new resonance. And so this story that was very much, the Cinderella story that we probably all grew up with, became like a point of interrogation for me. Like, why is it in a castle? There are no castles where I live. Why is a stepmom mean? My stepmom is very nice. Like, why is that, it starts to burgeon those kind of questions. But more importantly, when I started to go to other schools, I went to a school called Faith Acting Studios run by Deirdre Weston and Felicia Scott, and eventually Amazing Grace Conservatory run by Wendy Raquel Robinson. And both of those places were about cultivating artists that had their own voices. There was a graduation through those institutions that moved you into the space of content creator and devised work. Oh, nice.
And so that was always sort of what I had done. So it actually, while I never, as a child, like consciously said, this is what I'm going to do, it makes sense to me that I ended up doing it, because that's just what I saw it being done.
That's great.
So I'm not so unique. I just did what the people before me did.
Thank goodness you were paying attention, though. That's great.
I don't think I was paying attention as much as I was like absorbing.
Okay.
And when I got to places in my own professional career where I felt bereft of purpose or autonomy, everything in me wanted to create what I expected.
Nice.
And so I just allowed that to happen. I allowed it to happen. And I realized that I was pretty much modeling the largely women, but also men who taught me. They did the exact same thing.
I sort of sped over the geographical location of your childhood, but tell people where you're from, Nikkole.
I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, not to be mistaken for Hollywood. I was not born and raised in Hollywood. People often like
Very
mistake the
different.
two.
Yeah,
It's a
very
very
different
different thing.
reality. Yeah,
LA for me
yeah.
is not the biz at
No,
all.
I'm with you. I'm
At
with you.
all.
Having been born and raised in South Central, very different reality than West LA or
Yeah. Just
Hollywood.
not those places. I never went to those places.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not till I started, getting involved in the business.
Right.
Even as a child actor, I did what I did for my child acting, and then I didn't hang out there. That wasn't my
Yeah,
life.
yeah. Wow. Well, that's a whole nother story, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that. Like academic institutions everywhere, George Mason University is in the throes of asking difficult questions about representation and inclusion on our stages
Yeah.
and in our classrooms. This guest artist series actually grew out of a graduate course that I taught last semester called Dramatic Theory and Criticism, Unpacking Race and Power in Contemporary American Theater. And the curriculum of that
Mm.
course represented a deliberate departure from the traditional approach to dramatic theory, which centers European scholars' discourse, modes of making. And my goals included developing more awareness of the ways in which the underrepresentation of marginalized voices persist in American theater, becoming more familiar with artists and scholars of color engaged in conversations for radical change and racial justice,
Mm.
cultivating more comfort and proficiency when even talking about race, power, and privilege, and ultimately identifying and articulating how race informs our own aesthetics, processes, practices as theater
Mm.
makers. And the course was really a drop in the bucket in terms of it was a small part of the multiple initiatives that the School of Theater has launched. All faculty and staff are continuing to decolonize syllabi and unpack implicit bias, race, power on our stages, as well as in the classroom. Your work as an artist, educator, and activist really exemplifies for me that work. As I was digging into the website and looking at, your biography, really what came to mind is India Ari's personal mission to spread love, peace, and healing through the power of words and music.
Mm.
Um, and
Mm.
yeah, and by healing, I always think, okay, in order to begin healing, we have to identify and articulate where we are, where we're
Mhm.
standing, if we want to move, if we want to change. I'm wondering if you had a personal mission as an artist. If you did, what might that be?
Yeah, I did. I had to to use art to examine and to galvanize our awareness of the story's power to influence how we perceive who we are
Yeah,
and how we perceive who we're becoming.
yeah,
So yes, I definitely have a mission um,
yeah,
to move, not just to center Black voices, which I think is sort of what happens because I envision myself and my milieu
yeah,
through the art that I create.
yeah,
But I would say it's my desire is not to give voice to the voiceless people of the African diaspora. My goal is not that there's anything wrong with that. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
My goal is to demonstrate and galvanize people around the spiritual power of the embodied narrative to influence how we see the world and who we're allowing ourselves to become.
yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
There's a term you've used a couple times, and we don't often hear it in relationship to the work that we do, but I believe there is a spiritual foundation for what we do, and
Very much.
I'm I'm wondering, are you finding it? Your current role, I know that it's fairly new, but you've also taught a great deal. Do you find that it's, what am I trying to say? Is it difficult to align academia and spirituality, or do you find that you can give language to it in the classroom and studio that it's received by the students you teach?
Actually, I very much think it aligns. I mean, we're at an academic institution that steeps itself in a cultural context,
Yeah.
a cultural, academic, and intellectual context. Where did theater come from?
Hello. Yeah. Yeah.
It came from like, we were like, ooh, I'm bored, you're bored. Let me do a show for you. Like, is that how it happened? No, that's not how it happened.
Right.
All of these forms come from a deep spiritual place, and a deep desire to participate in the evolution of the natural world
Right.
in the ways that we can. I mean, all theater was born in ritual.
Yeah.
Embodiment is a ritualistic thing to do.
I absolutely am in accord. I think sometimes we forget that, though, the origins of theater
Yeah.
as ritual.
Theater, dance, music, none of these things came from
Right.
from our desire to entertain one another.
Right. Right. I can imagine, of course, some of the challenges you faced in the industry, from Hollywood to Broadway, specifically as a Black woman, I guess. And I'm wondering if you could share a bit how you've navigated that world, those challenges. You know, how do you maintain your compass?
I'll say, Professor Brenner, I have caused as much problems as people have caused me. So we're even. I don't see myself, especially if you know the history of storytelling in this country, dramatic storytelling in this country, I don't see myself as particularly burdened by my Blackness or by my womanness at all. People have endured much more than I have.
Yeah.
For real. I've never had to enter the back of a building. I've never been asked to not audition. I've never been asked to get off the stage. I've never been asked to do crazy things. Like, I haven't. Maybe it's because I'm a tall woman. People don't ask me crazy things because they think I'm gonna beat them up. I don't know. Like, people don't ask me crazy things.
They don't ask you to represent somebody that you're not, or
no, they don't ask me to represent someone that I'm not.
Okay.
No one does blackface in front of me. Like, you know, like, I haven't had any of these direct experiences that I've heard have existed, for sure. In the contemporary space, not just in the historic space. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It really is not my personal experience. I would say the only experience I have had, again, was an experience that was a conflict that I guess I initiated through my questioning. I was a part of a production that had a historic context. And throughout the course of the rehearsal process, it was quite clear to me that not much time, effort, energy, or attention had been given to the realities of the historical character that I was embodying at all. And while I actually at the time didn't think that that was a maleficent act, because I'm also a writer and I know it's hard to write. It's really hard to do. It's hard to do well. So I was actually willing to help. By advocating for the character and informing the production of ways of the source material that I was getting my understanding of the character from, and how those things might be incorporated in what we had already built. Like, I wasn't even saying write another play.
Was that offer received well? Or?
No, not well, not very well. And again, back to my naivete, like, if I had really given it some thought, I probably could have figured out that it wouldn't have went over very well. But I really see myself as an advocate for the characters that I play on the teams that I get to be a part of. And there's a reason why, you know, this is a team sport and not an individual sport. It's because it's improved by the intelligence and the talents of the people in the room. It could also be, you know, brought to its detriment by the lack of talent and the lack of intelligence brought to the room. And so I always see myself as a valuable asset to the teams I'm a part of, because I'm willing to do the granular work around my character to help the whole. To help the whole.
And we touched on that the other day when we were talking about the necessity for dramaturgy, even in contemporary theater, contemporary American narratives. In particular, you know, sometimes you and I agreed, I think that that step is
It's often
minimized
missing.
or
Generalized, or it's missing. I think it
missing.
also harkens back to this, just the concept of artist as entertainer instead of artist as contributor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And many people don't think that the work that we do functions in a collegiate space, in an intelligent space, in an academic space.
Yeah.
While the result is not a paper in a journal, the result is a performance or a script.
Mm-hmm.
The study, the academic prowess that it takes to really build narrative is profound.
Yeah, yeah,
and equitable to
yeah,
anything created in any other academic discipline.
yeah, yeah.
We just don't talk about it that way because we're also trained to bring our work to the fore in a way that seems magical to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't talk about all that work
Mm-hmm.
and all that study
Yeah.
and all that knowledge building and understanding that goes into the work.
And
Because
what
you're like, see, it's
easy.
voila.
Like magic. Yeah. And what you're saying also suggests that the sort of collaborative nature of theater is really vital, right?
Yeah.
To its to bringing those stories to life.
Yes.
When you think about the, I, I think I already know the answer to this question, but I'm compelled to ask it anyway. How would you define the sort of American canon of dramatic literature? You know, how does your work even relate to that definition, your definition?
I mean,
Yeah.
the nomenclature around that
I know.
is misleading,
Mm-hmm.
because I think what people would refer to when they're referring to the American canon doesn't include all Americans.
Yeah, and therein lies the problem.
Yeah,
And therein lies
therein lies the problem.
yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
include all Americans. It doesn't even define American, which is a whole other existential conversation, perhaps, or perhaps it's a political conversation. One of the things I think that's unique, if there's a such thing as American existentialism, exceptionalism, American exceptionalism, I think we're exceptional not because we're ranked higher.
Yeah.
We're exceptional because we're different in one particular way. It's that we're a nation allied by ideals. You
Right.
are American if you pledge yourself to the concepts of democracy and freedom that underline our founding documents. You're not American because you were born here. You're not American because your parents are American. You're not American because you practice a particular religion or you occupy a certain geography. The root of being American means that none of that stuff matters, because the rest of the world also has that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us exceptional, because that's the exception.
The key word for me that you said is the concept.
It's the concept.
Right.
We're a nation built on a concept,
Right.
not geography, not religion, not history.
Right. Right.
So are you down for that concept?
I'm down for the concept. Sometimes,
Right.
you know, the implementation.
Are you willing to do what it takes to manifest the concept?
Well, that's a different question that we
Right.
all need to pose ourselves at this juncture in history, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think many people who are, politically American are actually very much spiritually, intellectually, mentally a part of like some monarchy somewhere. I don't know what they're doing. Like they don't actually believe in these ideals. They believe in hierarchy.
Right. Right. Mm.
There are many hierarchical places you could go.
Yeah. And I'll just, if I might say, like your work for me is rich in not only because you're committed to a Black experience, but that Black experience is nuanced. And it goes, it travels through time, through gender, across class, and yeah, so
Well,
I'm a fan. What can I say?
thank you. That makes me feel good. That made my day. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's good to be liked. Thank you.
So this conversation, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion at HBCUs, it has to be different in some ways than it is the public research universities, liberal arts colleges. I suspect there are similarities, but I mean, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see at HBCUs in the 21st century,
I think that it's the myth of uniformity, or the myth of unity around the African diasporic experience. Like, even people who are very aware that it's not a monolith can't imagine that there are dynamics of equity, diversity, and inclusion within our community that need to be addressed.
There we go.
Which is true. They do. I think when people even use the EDI moniker, they're often in our community only referring to race. And there's so much more to equity, diversity, and inclusion than the racial reckoning that is happening, in our academic spaces. So in that sense, yes, Howard is also having a reckoning of its own. I would say the communities of the African diaspora tend to be very, to be blunt, just homophobic and transphobic. And I feel like those things are at the forefront of some of the work that's happening here, how genderized many of the offerings are. Not only within our department, but across the school and across student affairs and student activities. I mean, I remember being a part of a panel where students were rallying for the use of degendered language just in the administration of the university's services in general. And all of the administrators agreed that, that was something that needed to happen. And in the next breath, they're like, we hope to see you at the women's club meeting and, the Men of Mecca meeting. It's just like, like, oh, I'm not sure that people even hear it. I'm not sure that people even hear it. And I would say that there are class issues as well that abound. There are all these ways in which we have created rankings for one another that this work is asking us to obliterate because we made them up. So it's just to stop the madness. But when people, just like any other people of any other race or demographic, people believe in hierarchy because we were indoctrinated to believe in hierarchy. And so when you have worked to achieve a certain hierarchy, or you have a fear of slipping down the hierarchy, it's amazing to see how much you cling to your position. And find ways to justify not losing your position. So whether that's a position of privilege that comes from race, or it comes from gender, or it comes from religion, or it comes from class, or it comes from education, wherever your place of privilege comes from, you don't want to lose that privilege because you believe in the privilege. And I think this work is actually asking us to change the paradigm, to first imagine. I think we're in the space of art makers here, to give time and space for us to imagine a world beyond the paradigm of hierarchy. Because I don't think many people can actually fathom what that might be like, let alone that it would work. Right? If we create work that allows us to apply our collective imagination to that possibility, then maybe we can see the manifestation of that sooner than later. But I feel like we'll see it regardless. I have a very long view of humanity. because it doesn't, not because it doesn't work, but because it's not real. It doesn't exist in nature. That dynamic doesn't exist in nature. We have misperceived the hierarchy. It has always been a network of interdependence.
Right.
So when we looked upon nature and said, the lion is the top, the bee is the bottom. Well, you go ahead and see what the earth is like with no bees.
With no bees.
You go check that out and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's not there. There's no such thing as a top or bottom.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard for a human being to conceive, a human being experiencing gravity to conceive, because in your perception of the world, there's the sky and there's the ground. There's a top and there's a bottom.
Right.
You can't imagine that the top just keeps going and the bottom also keeps going.
So we have to change our perception, right?
Well, we have to also acknowledge the fallibility of our perceptive instrument.
Well, okay, well, that too.
Like you
Yes,
are actually
yes,
not
yes.
equipped to see it all.
To see it all.
No.
At the same time.
You aren't.
Yeah. And while, these conversations have focused on racial inequity, thank you for bringing intersectionality into the conversation.
Yeah.
That's sort of the next leg of the journey. Obviously, we are not monolithic beings. Our identities and our experiences, right, intersect across all kinds of things,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So who, in your mind, who is creating theater that inspires you, past or present, and why?
Past or present? That's excellent.
Yeah. Open it up, Nikkole.
I love that. Immediately, once you said past, I don't know if they're even in the past. They might also still be present. But back in the day when I was younger, I fell in love with a company called the Theatre de Complicité. It was a British theater company doing some amazing work around the concepts of identity specifically, but not exclusively. And all of their work was devised. One of the things that interests me about even returning to Howard as a professor is to find a space where we can also return to the original impulses of theater making, which were in and around ritual, which were always all inclusive. They weren't intellectual exercises only. They weren't dramatic exercises only. They were storytelling experiences that promoted transformation in the viewer and in the performer. And this company is a devised theater company, and there's their use of space and composition and body and voice and just everything everything. They use everything.
All of it.
I tend to be such a heady person, so I'm always inspired to see how much intelligence that the body and the voice have in the process of transformation. And that company, when I first saw them, blew my mind, as did the company, oh gosh, I think they're called The Team. It's the company that was started in part by Rachel Chavkin.
Okay.
They did a play, I will never forget it. I saw it when I was in Scotland at the Edinburgh Festival. They did a play called Particularly in the Heartland, which sounds like the most mundane middle America BS that you have ever seen. Like, why do you go see a play called Particularly in the Heartland?
Right.
Well, I went to see this play, and maybe it was because I was also on foreign soil. It was probably the first time I realized I was American. Deeply American. And that American was like truly a thing. That was a thing. It wasn't the barometer for normal. It was its own thing.
I think you have to be on foreign soil to
have that experience, right?
I think you do. Yeah.
I totally had that experience with that company. But aside from the content of the show, which was wild, I mean, there were aliens and eggs. I can't even describe it to you. Like, it's just a lot going on. A lot going on.
Okay.
But I was inspired by their devising, their storytelling thumbprint. I think so much of what the collegiate space has done to the making of artists is create a sense of cookie cutter sensibilities that doesn't do well for the evolution of the art and form or content.
Yeah.
And I'm always inspired by people who manage to break themselves away from that, or who manage to grow and evolve in a way that gives them a specific artistic voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really, really love that. Oh, yes. Thank you, Nicholas. Look at Nicholas working it out in the chat.
Thank you, Nick. That's great.
My pleasure.
Now, there are also my contemporaries. I'd be beside myself if not to mention my contemporaries, because I do love their work, not because they are my contemporaries. I actually really dig what they're doing. I mean, the work of Dominique Morisseau, the work of Terrell Allen McCraney, the work of Marcus Gardley, the directing work happening with Oye Tempo, and there are some amazing people doing some amazing work right now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting too. A lot of those playwrights are moving into film. And
they
television.
are, yeah.
So it's changed the landscape of film and television as well. It's exciting.
I love it. Like Katori Hall. I mean, everyone's just doing such amazing, bold and daring work.
Yeah.
That also is in the inclusion space, like really challenging themselves to be storytellers for as many of the narratives that should be included in the American narrative as possible.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lastly, and I'm going to open it up. What are you most excited about and I forgot to mention that Nikkole is also a Howard alum. So it's sort of been a homecoming for you, which has to be really exciting. But I'm wondering what you're most excited about in your new role.
Oh gosh, I'm excited. This is selfish. I'm excited for my amalgamized self. I really believe in the process, or the concept rather, of ikigai. It's a Japanese concept of good living. And it's finding the space where what you love to do and what you're good at meets what the world needs and what you can be paid for.
Hello.
And
very, very good.
I feel like in this particular position, I found that I have, as well as the concept of Ubuntu, which is a South African concept of unity, a sense of I am because we are, a sense of community, which I also have here. I mean, I have the best job ever. I'm loved here. I'm respected here. I'm able to be my full, authentic self in all of my expression. I'm committed to creating space for the facilitation of the growth of the artists of the African diaspora, looking to bring and advance the causes of the diaspora. I get to do work in a city where there's tons of work.
Yes.
The city is also beautiful. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah.
I get to have summers where I can write and act, and maybe even sometimes during the fall and spring. I get to engage in intellectual stimulation with the scholars on campus. I'm already like, how can I work more in the storytelling space with the knowledge and information that's here? And I'm really happy to be a part of a place, a university in general, whose main charge, or one of their main charges, is to add to the body of knowledge of the discipline. I think doing that, particularly from the aesthetic and the viewpoint of the African diaspora, is really important. Yeah. Like, have you ever read a book about acting by a Black woman? You're about to, because you're going to read mine, right? Like these things don't exist, and they should. Have you ever studied voice, using the principles of African aesthetics, as established by, what is his name? Ferris was, I can't think of his name. I'm talking at my back now, but there's so many scholars and scholarship to do, to bring awareness to the brilliance of the technology that comes from the storytelling traditions out of the continent of Africa and into the diaspora. So well, who wouldn't want to do that? Well,
Yeah.
maybe some people would want to do that. I'm excited to
Some
do
people
that.
wouldn't, but it sounds like you're in the right place at the right time. It's all in divine order.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to open the virtual floor up for questions, and I invite you all to turn your cameras back on if you would like to, and if you have questions for Ms. Salter, I will either raise your virtual hand, your real hand, or write it in the chat, and I will try to acknowledge you.
Hello, Rick Davis.
Hello. How are you? This is so great. Since you called on me, I'm going to have to ask a question of you. Is that okay?
Sure.
First of all, thank you. I was a few minutes late, so if this was covered at the beginning, please just don't worry about it. But I want to hear a little bit more about Grace and your upcoming production at Ford's, and
Sure.
I think that's really exciting and seems to fit with many of the themes that you have talked about today. One of which, before I forget, I just wanted to say your description of what American exceptionalism really means, or really could mean, in an ideal way of an intellectual and spiritual and historic construct that's fully embracing of all the complexities of our history is one of the most generous and sort of forward-looking ways of thinking about that I've ever heard, and I wanted to thank you for that. But now I want to hear about your show.
Okay. Sure. So Grace is not my baby. Grace is the heart child of Nolan Williams, who is the writer, composer, and lyricist on the piece. Nolan came to me through actually Robert Barry Fleming, who was the director, with a body of work of songs. He's one of the most brilliant sort of songwriters, not sort of, the brilliant songwriters I've ever met. I've also never met anyone who's worked quite as fast. Like he puts us all to shame. He writes whole arias and orchestrations in like 2 evenings. He just doesn't sleep. And he annoys me incessantly because it makes me feel like I'm a slacker, and I'm not a slacker. It's going to take me a whole year and a half to write this play. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I can't do it in a night like you, Mr. Nolan Williams. So he's brilliant, but he's not a dramatist. The musical works often live in the space of emotional expression in a way that doesn't really help for the dramatic narrative, especially in the contemporary Western sensibility. So I was brought in to just bring structure to all of his brilliant ideas, and development to the characters, and to make him feel okay with the idea that the play at the end of the day is going to be about him. Because he's not a dramatist, so he doesn't know that everything is self-revealing. He's like, it's not about me. I'm like, no, it's about you. Like, it's not actually you, but it's completely about you. So I'm actually going to ask you questions because this is about you and your perception and how you feel about the world and what you're concerned with. And like, I need to dig into you, man. He was like, okay, dig away. So what you see is, if you know my body of work, you might be like, Nikkole wrote that? Because in my works, people die and no one gets what they want. But in this work, it definitely is designed to not only galvanize people around the concept of cultural preservation, but also to inspire, because that is the heart of Nolan Williams, one of the most inspirational people ever. So I hope my critical eye didn't get in the way of that, because that was his desire for sure. But it follows a family who's lost a matriarch. And as they're trying to grapple with her loss, they're also trying to grapple with the loss by extension of all of the things that she represented and the very restaurant that they're a part of. It seeks to honor the food traditions and food ways of African Americans and the early caterers in Philadelphia who actually started the catering industry, really, who were Black people. And also it looks to take a look at just it's not about gentrification by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of the given circumstances and is a part of a community that's changing and the impact that it has on the capacity for people to maintain culture and maintain community and unity. So
that's great. Thank you for the question too, because I was curious about that work.
Yeah.
Other comments, questions?
I just want to say hi to Kevin and Aaron and Norma. And is it Onawumi?
Onawumi?
Thank you for turning your cameras on. It's nice to meet you virtually. Oh, hi, yes, hi. I see you. Hi, Philip. Nice to see you too.
Nicholas, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a curiosity. I'd like to go back a little bit to something you said a little earlier on in the interview, because it really struck me. I'm paraphrasing, but you said people can't imagine a non-hierarchical world, and people fail to acknowledge their own inability to perceive the limitation of their own sight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a whole play about that.
And that is called?
It's called Breakout Session.
Breakout Session.
Yeah, it was a commission by the Cleveland Public Theater to explore the nature of implicit bias in policing. But ultimately, it's a play about trust and about our understanding of the limitations of our own perception.
Huh. Great. Yeah. Great. Well, related to that, I mean, that's perfect. Now I have extra reading to do. Kind of in light of that, what do you identify? What sort of particular tools do you see both inherent in theater and in this theatrical moment that we're in together to kind of, I guess this is an interdisciplinary question, to help other disciplines or other groups to see that and to help them move more slowly and to develop that vestibular sense of how to self-perceive, how to start to tune that meter that says, oh, I can't see everything. Where am I? What is this? I wonder if you have any guidance in that vein.
Oh shit. Well,
or even a gut.
Yeah, I would say in writing the play Breakout Session, I know that I'm on the right track when I'm start to be messed up, because I always start out every play knowing exactly what I want to say and that I'm right.
Yeah.
And when I get to the place of what the hell am I talking about? Or, oh my God, I never considered that. That's when I start to realize that the learning process, the transformation process that's happening in me will land on the page, hopefully for other people. That transformation process started to happen for me in Breakout Session when I realized two things. One was through an optical illusion. No, three things. So there's an optical illusion, there's the mantis shrimp, and there's police training. Okay, the optical illusion, if you look it up, look up like frog horse optical illusion. What you'll see is when you look at the optical illusion in a certain way, like say straight on or vertically, it is a horse. And if you turn it horizontal, it is a frog. What I realized as I was trying to dramatize something in my play is that it is neither a horse nor a frog. It is a fragorse. It is both of those things. You only see what you allow yourself to see depending on how you look at it, but it never stops being a fragorse just because you only see the frog. You see what I'm saying? And so that's the one. Two, police training. When two officers are taken or are trained to enter a volatile or dangerous situation, one of the formations that they are given to make is a back-to-back situation. Why? Because on one side of this circle, someone sees 180 degrees, and on the other side of the circle, someone else sees 180 degrees. And together we see 360 degrees. So that these perspectives that seem to be opposite are actually complementary. So if you want to see the whole picture, you have to be back to back and trusting of someone who sees everything that you cannot see. And what's interesting to me about that training is that the person on this side will respond to whatever the person on this side says that they see, but they have never seen it. Ever.
It's such a metaphor for this moment we're in also, right? In terms of.
So the third thing that I learned in that play, why the play has a mantis shrimp in it, there's a bunch of animals in this play. I don't know what I was doing. I still don't know quite what I'm doing, but it's okay. What I was trying to get at with the animals is the idea that there are things that are living now that perceive more than you do. Bats hear more than you do. A crocodile can feel the water pressure change from something entering the water a mile away. And the mantis shrimp has 14 cones in its eyes for the perception of color. You have 3, unless you're a really special woman, you might have 4. And if you should test yourself, ladies, there's some women who have 4. And they don't know it because why would you know? But there's a test you can take and you'd be like, oh crap, I do see a different color. That's for you. But in general, you have 3. So when the mantis shrimp says to you that the sky is not blue, and you put the mantis shrimp in a straitjacket, who's messed up, the mantis shrimp or you?
Oops. Yeah.
It's brilliant.
That right there.
It's brilliant.
So those 3 revelations I sought to also dramatize, so that not only are my characters having transformational moments that they are either deciding to allow or disallow, but my audience members are having transformational moments that they are deciding to allow or disallow. Because a large part of it is not just the fact of it. We actually, the ancient societies knew this, first and foremost. Western societies has finally had science that has evolved, that has told them this. But none of our systems, the systems we create, reflect these truths we now have accepted as true. All of our systems believe in hierarchy. So we continue to perpetuate this suffering because we continue to operate out of alignment with the truth, though we know it. Stop it.
Stop it. Thank you, Professor. Yeah.
If only we could. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Anybody else?
Other comments? I think you've got all of us thinking now. Well,
I've come to praise you. This is Onawumi, and I've come to praise you. I'm come to praise you because you are the carrier of the ancestors' voices and their behaviors. I've come to praise you because I recognize you so well. I recognize you so well. And you are years younger than I am. I'm 85 years old, but I recognize you as the coming of them. I recognize your work as honoring predecessors who are still with us, but also messages informed by messages of the ancestors who gave the predecessors the message that you're picking up on. I recognize you. You recognize your people. So I come to praise you and to say your work speaks to me that you're examining and exploring and expressing the interconnections, the intersections, the interdependence of we are connected to Ukraine. We are connected to Trayvon Martin. We are connected to all of this. We have been duped by colorization and classism. And it is time for us to make the connection between, I believe, the Middle Ages and its history and its intersection with us being stolen from Africa and enslaved in this country. That when you look at the Middle Ages and you put it all together, classism, all of it is there. We are connected so far back.
Yeah.
And and so I'm just thankful to you and just one moment, one more thing. Your piece that you're doing with the animals, that's ancient Africa. We know that because they would never say directly to one another, you are a fool. They would let the animal and the stories that they told tell that.
Right. Like what's one of the things that's so interesting to me is the notion of entertainment. I've been spoken to twice by Ozzie Davis before he passed. I did not know him. Once was here at school. We were doing a production of Pearlie, and once was at Juilliard when I just happened to be there because some friends of mine were attending Juilliard and he was speaking. But what struck me is that he told the same story twice, and he didn't know that I was there. So this is like the story he was telling, like on his tour of schools, I guess. And he told a story about how he got into theater after he came back from the military. What drew him to even want to be a part of that when he could have had a career in the military with healthcare and things, he said the work of artists like Clifford Odets and Brecht and the burgeoning Black arts movement, which was basically the difference between that and say the Harlem Renaissance, was that it was not only art, it was art for Black people's sake. The work of Barbara Ann Teer, who, if you don't know Dr. Barbara Ann Teer, get to know Barbara Ann Teer, who called her company members liberators. These people were really finding ways and being honored by the community of viewers as contributors to the thought of society. There's a reason why the non-for-profit theater and the church and the school all are 501c3s. You don't go to church or to school and say, entertain me. You often go, and it's hard to go. To hear the things that are being said, but you know that they're enriching you. So you go. Well, the theater has the same IRS designation as those other institutions. People should come because they know that they're being enriched, not because they're going to be pleased. And so Ozzie Davis said that the McCarthyism moment, he remembered it distinctly as a pivotal change in how the industry he decided to be a part of was functioning, where people were afraid to step into their role in society as artists. and became relegated to the concept of entertainment. And that, between that and just the transactional nature of our economy in general, had obliterated our role in society, but also taught generations of audiences that that's who we were. Because they saw us do nothing else. So we, the storytellers, have a story problem. We got a narrative problem. Because the people who are telling our story, you never, who lives, who dies, who tells your story, the people who are telling our story are telling people that we're here to please them. And that our only value is in how deeply we engender that pleasure. And then we as theater makers talk amongst ourselves about the other parts that we're offering.
Yes.
All of our audience should know what we're for and why they engage us. And so we have not only to make the work, we have a lot of audience development work to do.
Yes.
To move us back to the place where people understand that actually everyone has a right to be a part of the American narrative. I mean, that's what the regional theater movement was about. Not bringing New York to people, bringing the people to everyone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
No one knows that they get to be a part of the story.
Yes.
But it's our job to actually make them a part of the story.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
We're busy bringing them idealisms that don't even exist.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to do, and it's a work like every other movement that will happen on many fronts. We need people on every front to do that if we're going to get back to the place for why we do what we do. Which again, I will say, no one woke up one day and said we should put on these petticoats and tell these stories. Like, no one said that. Nobody said that. Somebody said, let me tell you a story of overcoming, because you need one.
But when you know what the role of the petticoat is, and you hand it over to Judith Jemison,
yes,
and she struts and gives the language of dance,
yes,
you know what a petticoat
can do, right?
Oh, baby, baby, baby.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah, so I feel like in general, we've been maligned, and we're not the only nation to have this problem, but I think it is unique. In my other job, I'm an arts advocate. If you need to look up arts advocacy work, you should really look at the group Be an Arts Hero. But one of the brilliant things that they're trying to push for, they've recently, or I should say we have recently engendered a hearing by the Small Business Committee, because artists are small businesses, to look at the power, the promise, and the peril of the creative economy. We contribute 4.2% of the GDP. We contribute more than I think transportation does to the revenue building, for those people who just only care about the money.
More than sports.
To the revenue building of our nation. We don't get 4.2% worth of support, though.
Right.
Feel me? But we don't advocate, and we don't teach our students how to advocate, and that they should. For our industry, for our stories, for anything. And so we have a lot of isolationism existing in the journey of artists in general that we need to do away with as well.
Yes, yes. I'm like everyone here, I'm just honored to hear you, and thankful to Jola. I love Jola. Jola is responsible for liberating me further than I was already liberated. And I will be eternally grateful to him. And so all of you who are doing this work, all of you, everybody that's on this, thank you, thank you. There's a song. It is done by Harry Belafonte. Title of the song is "We Come From." We come from. it is just, if you want to do a connection kind of thing. We come from the valley, living in the valley, go back to the valley, turn the world around. And so we come from the river, we come from the mountain. And then the song shows how they interact with one another. Do it to understand why you cannot just use color. Do it to understand why geography does not fully separate us, that across these lines. Do it to know the relation between the sky and the ground, as was spoken to about our speaker. Do it, and go back and turn your world around. And when you turn your world around, my world is going to be better, because I will turn it around so that it will come and we will connect. Thank you, Jola, for inviting me. Thank you for Nicholas for always getting me on. I never know how to get on. God bless every one of you. And I am going to step back, Jola. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like it's been a soul nourishing conversation, and it's been a pleasure, Nikkole. Really, really, really appreciate you. I just wanted to say that we've been recording all of the conversations, and they will soon be available, all of them. One of them is available now. It looks like Nick has put the link into the chat. That was my conversation with Cloak Rivas, which happened last fall, and really, really, really great to have you in conversation, Nikkole. And I know we'll see each other, because you're right across the way. So,
yes, yes, indeed.
yeah. Many thanks to George Mason School of Theater and the Mason Players for Change, and the Friends of Theater for their support in publicizing and attending this event. Special shout out to you, Nicholas, working behind the scenes, keeping us all on track. Thank you, thank you. Our next lunchtime chat is with artist, activist, and attorney, also a member of the Cherokee Nation, Mary Catherine Nagel, on Monday, March 28th. And I hope to see you all then. In the meantime, take good care. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
you,
so much,
Professor.
Jola.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. I can't wait to check out your other talks. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.